and then just...
Hello, I am Rachel Clark, a postgraduate student completing my final assessment of a Masters of Teaching degree, a reflection on my research and the presentation of this research to my placement school community. I have been studying teaching for over 2 years and am now beginning the transition into the exciting and stimulating world of teaching. This assessment will cover 2 areas. One of the areas I will be addressing is the classroom-based research I recently undertook at an independent school in the eastern suburbs of Melbourne as part of my Masters of Teaching. The other area is the presentation of this research to a staff group from my placement school. I'll be reflecting on the research and its implications for my teaching and classroom practice in general. I will also be reflecting on the presentation to staff about my research. The research I undertook in Term 1 explored the benefit of a vocabulary procedure for English as an additional language students studying in mainstream classes in the senior college. The research signalled the transition between student-teacher to teacher-researcher as I was in charge of my own pedagogy and studying its application within a research framework. This period of time spent researching in my school placement, including the final presentation of the research findings, was exciting and invigorating, but also at times intimidating. I will explore further why I felt these combination of emotions as I proceed through this presentation. I will now move on to my reflections of the research experience, detailing what I have learnt from the process. Undertaking research in real class time has provided many valuable learning opportunities. At times it was extremely challenging, with students occasionally resisting involvement in the procedure within their class time. However, at other times, successful involvement and engagement was noted, and this was really exciting for me. To create opportunities for success, developing student buy-in to the process of research is important, especially at senior school level, where the students were that I was researching. The students need to feel that being involved in the research will be beneficial to their study. That's part of their developmental process at this stage of the schooling. Often this buy-in can be developed by the subject teacher explicitly validating the research and the researcher's role in that by stating the benefits explicitly to the students. It was also clear to me throughout the research that the person with the relationship with the student is the best person to undertake research within a classroom setting. This person in the classroom at the time I was there was the subject teacher, not me. However, questions remain for me as to practically how a teacher would juggle research whilst being responsible for teaching, which of course includes classroom management, assessment requirements, marking, and so on. I believe there are real limits to being able to meaningfully undertake research and trial new ideas whilst delivering the curriculum and being subject to changes and limitations due to school management decisions and VCAR constraints. As a person who is interested in learning and developing myself in all areas of my life, I would like to think I would be able to, at some stage as a teacher, undertake research to advance my own knowledge and that of the teaching profession. But I do remain, at the moment, unsure how in practice this could occur due to the pressure on time and output within the classroom. Despite this current reticence, I have developed further confidence in myself as a result of undertaking research within the rigours of academic study and have benefited from sowing new seeds in my practice. I will continue to throw my net out to catch new ideas, whether it be through my own reading of other people's research or at some stage when ready, continuing my own. I will now move on to research implications for classroom practice. The research findings revealed an increase in students' perceived skills in the area of word learning. As a result of these findings, there is merit in continuing to utilise the vocabulary procedure that I developed, which included glossary keeping skills, within senior level subject classes. Teachers need, however, to be trained in the procedure's use so that they can regularly target key subject words effectively. It is important that subject teachers also feel empowered to adapt the procedure. This is really important, I think, so that they can work with it within their domain area. A key finding from the research revealed differences in approaches to vocabulary across subjects. Really interesting part of the research, I think. Subjects with a physical proximity to vocabulary through the regular use of a textbook, for example, will need to utilise word learning strategies differently to subjects which are more process-driven. So in process-driven disciplines such as art, the vocabulary is more implicit and often abstract in nature, and approaches to learning subject vocabulary will need to differ than, say, for example, accounting, which is the more concrete text-based subject I did my research in as well. In my existing classroom practice as an EAL-trained teacher, I use and have used vocabulary procedures at the start of each lesson as a key element of my practice. In the new context of a mainstream classroom, I would continue to use this feature to develop my understanding of the use of vocabulary teaching within a mainstream setting. Indeed, this was the focus of my research. However, I will choose to adapt the procedure as I see fit, because I recognise that it's not one size fits all, according to the subject I am teaching, and I will continue to observe and document any changes and developments I see in my students as a result of using the procedure. I also intend to survey my students at regular intervals to gauge their developing metacognition about word learning strategies. The research I undertook raised questions about the role of teacher modelling when new skills are being developed. As a beginner teacher, this area interests me, and I would like to explore further which modelling strategies work for this area of study. I will experiment with the word learning strategy which involves breaking down the target word and exploring key linguistic elements, including the root word, prefixes, suffixes, and additional lexical support from synonyms. This was a really useful element of the procedure, actually. I will trial using this procedure at different stages of the lesson and in different stages of the unit. I will also explore the best approaches to developing solid glossary keeping strategies through the use of modelled paper-based practice and also through the use of technology. So the students can move from not only using word learning strategies to being able to use word retaining strategies. My ultimate aim is to empower students to know how to learn new words independently and where to store this information for reference and revision. I will now move on to reflecting on any changes I would make to the research resulting from my experience in my professional attachment. Despite interesting findings, I have reflected on how I would improve the research and the research process I undertook in the following ways. Firstly, I would enhance the researcher-teacher partnership by working more closely with teachers to locate shared areas of research. I did speak with both teachers prior to identifying my methodology and research question, but I would enhance this as a key structural element to the research process. As I have already identified, when teachers, those ones that have the relationships with the students, validate research, students take it more seriously. This shared involvement would reinforce the value of the research in the eyes of the students undertaking the research. Having worked more closely with the teachers, I would then refine my research question and the subsequent survey and observation questions so that my research could be more targeted. In my research, the initial question was too broad and too qualitatively based, which then proved challenging when I needed to apply quantitative methodology as a result of ethics approval. I have learned that the more targeted the question under research, the clearer the outcome of the research. Finally, I would remind myself not to take perceived rejections of my research by students to heart. and to recognise that students' reactions result from a wide range of stimulus. High school students, due to the developmental stage of adolescence, have a range of reactions that differ according to their mood on the day and their comfort with the subject they were in. Any perceived snub on attempts at new learning approaches should really be viewed as just another element of classroom management and relationship building. Trying new approaches to learning, as seen in classroom-based research, is a vital element of professional approaches to teaching and learning, and students need to be exposed to such approaches and be reminded why such processes are important. I will now move into a reflection of the school presentation experience and the range of reactions and feelings I had during and after presenting. I found the school presentation experience both satisfying yet challenging. It was a satisfying experience because I was presenting my original research as a professional to other professionals. I felt proud of investigating my own area of interest within the context of my first master's level research project. This stage of the master's, where we have been exploring ideas of specific interest to us, has been both productive and rewarding, as we're contributing to the field of educational knowledge, and I enjoyed the challenge of presenting my ideas. However, recognising one's place within this canon is also intimidating. Presenting my research as a beginner teacher raised personal questions of authority and validity in me, and I felt very much the novice in the room, raising ideas that, whilst grounded in research methodology, may serve to disrupt or challenge the status quo in the classroom. This disruption may indeed be a welcome outcome for students and be beneficial to them, but it also may be challenging for teachers who may need to adapt their practice as a result. For this reason, I was aware of a range of different agendas in the room, from teachers who were really engaged and wanting to take away ideas, through to those that were more reluctant to explore my findings and suggestions. However, I recognised whilst presenting and afterwards that being a proactive member of the teaching profession requires standing up for new ideas and approaches, and this carries a risk to personal and professional feelings. After the presentation, I reminded myself to have confidence in myself as an experienced professional, despite my newness to the profession. So like the person in this picture, I will keep moving forward into the middle distance, and at the same time, we'll look back and see how far I have come in my studies and skill development. The teaching and learning landscape is at times overwhelming. There is so much to learn about how we as teachers can best work with students. But by keeping on trying new approaches and learning new ideas from others, in other words, moving forwards through the landscape, we will become stronger and more able to navigate difficult terrain. I will now outline the audience feedback I received from the school presentation and my thoughts on and personal responses to this feedback. The audience included teaching learning leaders responsible for domain areas and those with senior level responsibilities, staff who have significant responsibility and oversight for staffing changes and curriculum development. As a result, the questions and overall feedback about the presentation revolved around implementation of a new approach within existing classes and with teachers who have existing ways of delivering their material. Throughout the presentation, the audience responded positively to the content matter, which included challenging descriptions of lack of skills within the teaching profession overall, as can be seen in the next slide, slide 8, taken from the presentation PowerPoint that I showed to the audience, revealing literature review findings, alongside suggestions for improvement to be made as a result of the research findings seen in slide 9, also from the literature review. The information on research findings seen here in this slide and research recommendations seen in the following slide prompted discussion and a certain level of doubt, including whether the research merited a change in approach across the school. For those expressing the certain level of doubt, a further breakdown of data was requested, an area that I was not sufficiently prepared to answer detailed questions about. For those who considered the procedure to be a possibility as a new approach to support language students within a mainstream class context, questions were asked about which subjects it would be most suitable to trial in and how practically that could occur. A focus on practicalities included further questions asked about the finer details of the procedure, such as how long it took each time, how teachers chose the word targeted each time, and how long it took for improvements to be seen as a result of the procedure. Questions also concerning teacher training were asked. During the feedback stage of the presentation, where matters of practicality were being discussed, I did feel insufficiently experienced to reply fully to operational matters concerning an introduction of a new approach to an existing curriculum. The issue at play is the application of theory to practice, and I am unsure how it is best achieved. I feel a future learning experience for me would be to view more experienced academics making proposals to teaching staff, just to view how they pitch their suggestions. I will now move on to reflecting on any changes I would make to the research presentation. The presentation was an enjoyable and productive experience. Through the carefully considered presentation structure I used, my research process and findings were able to flow smoothly. I would not make significant changes to the presentation. However, I would enhance the level of detail given from the research findings to include more focus on the research data. This was obviously an area of weakness in my presentation. When questions were asked about the data, I was not sufficiently comfortable to answer in the manner I would have liked. I also did not have copies of the findings tables, and this would have been helpful to use for group reflections and further questions. I would therefore improve my conversance with the data findings prior to such a presentation, and then have handouts of the presentation of the findings tables available to back up my claims from the research and beyond. Ideally, I would have observed an experienced academic or teacher researcher delivering similar material to an experienced teacher audience. This would have enabled me to observe how they approach such material within the context of existing teaching and learning constraints. I will now seek out an opportunity to observe a similar presentation for my own professional learning. I will now move on to the concluding slide to sum up my reflections on my research and the presentation of my research. In this presentation, I have explored how, as a beginner teacher, I undertook original research in a classroom context. I have outlined my feelings of excitement and nerves as I began the process of exploring new areas of pedagogy, testing them out through research methodology. I have also explored what I would change about the research process having undertaken it, and then how the research findings will impact on my classroom practice in the future. The presentation of this research to the school community has also been examined, revealing how challenging yet invigorating it was to deliver my research findings to my placement school audience of experienced teachers. I have noted the improvements I would make to such a presentation, but also reinforced the sound elements of the presentation as it was delivered. In summary, in addition to the above reflections on research and presentation, I have revealed key learnings for myself as a teacher as a result of my role as teacher researcher. I must have faith in myself, believing in the value of my ideas within the classroom. And I must continue to apply rigour and reflective practice in my classroom through the trial of new ideas. I hope you have enjoyed my final assessment for the Masters of Teaching degree, and that you wish me the best of luck as I embark on my solo flight as a newly qualified graduate teacher. Thank you.